All right, this is a lab on how to do titles and credits. We'll do the credit ones later. This video is specifically about doing opening titles. And what we want to do is open up Adobe Premiere. We have here the setup stage out of 7. So we have a project name. We have a location I've saved this to on my computer. You should, of course, be saving yours where it makes sense to you on your machine, depending on what your work environment is. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to, let's see, there's somewhere here, there's some sample media. I'm going to grab some sample media because the media we're going to use today is just sort of incidental. So grab a few clips here, just check a few off from the sample media section. And we're just going to stick some of these together for the purpose of our project. So then click Create. And this always takes longer than I think it should. So as it gets added in there, it drops it right into place. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to put our titles in a separate sequence. Now what I want to do here, and I want to get you guys to give me a screenshot on this, is we want to folderize or use what we call bins in Adobe Premiere to store and organize our content. So let's open up a new bin and let's call this footage. And then take all your footage and drop all your footage except for the sequence, not the sequence. Sequence is not footage. So we're going to call that one here. So we're going to call this, we're going to right click on this and choose rename. And we're going to name this O2 main. Now what do we have O2 if we don't have O1 for yet? We're going to make another sequence in a minute, which we can easily do by right clicking here and choosing duplicate. And the reason I'm duplicating is I want the other sequence to have the exact same settings. So I'm going to click duplicate. And this new one I'm going to rename. And we call this O1 titles. So now we've got content to work with. And what we'll do later is we're going to string all these three pieces together into one place. So we want to take this titles, and I guess we can organize this by clicking here and it'll order them this way. Okay, the reason I use O1 and O2 is to put them in order, make them easy to see, and it makes sense when I'm putting things together. So O1 titles, O2 main. And let's just go ahead and do another one where we're going to choose duplicate and call this one O3. We can right click here and choose rename, and we're going to call this one O3 credits, and then we're going to make one more. And I guess before I start duplicating everything, I'm going to open these up and delete the footage. Now, the one I want to keep the footage in is main. So if you go to titles, in the titles one, you can take out the footage. And in the third one, the credits one, we're going to take out the footage. And we're going to make one more copy of this. And where is it? It's there. It's duplicate. We're going to call this 10. And I always call my last one 10. I'll rename this 10 master. And this is the one that's going to contain my other sequences, but not yet. So let's open up titles. And now that we've got titles open here, we're going to go about the process of making our actual titles. So setting up our titles is a matter of making some text and putting it in place on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and make my workspace a little bit easier to work with. And I always move my space around. I probably should have told this at the beginning, but if you're not already in the editing workspace, do that. And I'm going to reset mine to my save layout because it makes more sense. And we'll be using a few panels here. We've got a source panel here. In the source panel, we can preview footage, which we've done before, hopefully. And in the effect controls panel, where we'll be today, we're going to be causing motion to happen with some of our items. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get the text tool. What is here in my timeline, or in my toolbox? And I'm going to click once, and I'm going to give my film a title. And the name of this film will be Your Film Title. And you could come up with a more clever title than that, I'm sure. But what I'm going to use is my workspaces. I'm here going to go to Captions and Graphics. And that, of course, opens up my panel on the right where I've got controls. Now, Browse lets me pick things. We're making these from scratch. Okay, later we'll learn how to make these in Photoshop and give them some effects and stuff. But we want to set these up here for now. And I'm going to center this title. And if I want to center this, I did the center alignment. And so if some words are longer, it'll center it. I'm going to set this up to align to center. Somewhere here, there's a button here for this. Like this. There we go. It's centered. And now I'm going to work with trying to fit it on the screen because really it doesn't fit very well. So I've got to work with my size. Now I've noticed that this little small area is kind of hard to work with fine motor skills like I've got. So I'm going to adjust the size of this area so I can work with this. And this is just sort of customizing my workspace. This is the size right here. So here's my font choice. Pick something you like. There's really nothing required, but always bold fonts are better. They should be easy to read. You don't want to have your viewers struggling to read the titles. It should be easy. So another thing that you can set the value for is there's a setting for what's called leading. And leading, of course, is the distance between the lines. I think this is leading here. So I'm going to reduce this number here a little bit, I think. There we go. So leading is based on the term of lead, which during the old days when typesetters actually had to hand set all the type, every letter was set by hand. The lead was the bar put between the lines and created consistent spacing. So this is the spacing between the lines. I'm just going to smash this a bit more to fit this. I'm just clicking on the number, dragging left. And now that I've done that, I'm also going to go back to my line and center it vertically in the screen. So it should be horizontally centered, vertically centered. It should fit the screen, and we should have some contrast. So the color of it you can change as well, but you want to make sure it's easily contrastable and easy to read. And that's one of the important things about titles is they're easy to read. So having gotten that set up, I'm going to go ahead and reset my workspace. And I'm just going to Window, Workspaces, Reset to save layout, so I can mess it around as much as I want to change it up. So here's my film title. Notice if you right-click on this and choose Speed Duration, the default duration is about 4 or 5 seconds. And you usually want to have the thing show up long enough to read it twice for the average reader. But for a title, you may want to have it show up a little bit longer. So I'm going to go and set this to, go back to speed duration. I'm going to go with like 10 seconds. And that number for 10 seconds is 10 with 2 more zeros because it's 10 seconds and 0 frames. If you hit Tab, Premiere puts the punctuation in place because I hate typing the punctuation. It's just distracting. So I've got this, and I'm going to click OK on that. I'm going to move it over. So if I go to, let's go 3 seconds into my film, I'm going to have 3 seconds of nothing before my title shows up. Now, another thing here, the snapping tool. Snapping the timeline means that I can move this around, but I can also snap it right to that bar right there. So once I set my current time to 3 seconds, this will snap right to it if that is on by being blue. All right, so now I want to add some effects to it, and there's a panel I didn't tell you about earlier that I should have pointed out called the Effects panel. So if I point my mouse to the top of the Project panel and scroll, I'm eventually going to find Effects. And this is just a list of effects. Now, of course, up here we have effects controls, how they work, all the motion and stuff like that. What I want to do is I'm going to grab an effect from in here, and I'm going to find a video transition. And there's a whole bunch of different ones. Typically, we're pretty familiar with dissolves, and you could grab a dissolve and drop that on there. And what that does, if I grab it across dissolve and move it in there, it's just going to sort of fade in. And I can drag one to the end, and it's kind of preset. And that's kind of nice. And you can also, by the way, control the duration of these dissolves by stretching that out. And you don't want to be too long. You should kind of have some kind of a plan. But I want to find a couple more interesting, instead of dissolves, we're going to work with like some blinds or something. So if we choose a wipe, there's a band wipe, barn doors, checkers. There's somewhere in here, there's a Venetian blinds. Let's try this one. So if I drag that into place, what that does is it just sort of does this, and that works good. And you can control, you saw the thing that popped up over here in the effect controls. You can control the direction of the wipe by somewhere here. There should be I guess the horizontal wipes, the Venetian blinds are automatically vertical or horizontal. So we see going like this to this. This lets you test out your results as you're working with it from going A to B, and you can try things out. You can click actual sources in here. So I got this, and that's actually not showing. But the width of the border can be adjusted here, and that'll change the value of how big the blinds are that open up. And that's a choice as well. Now, if you don't like what you pick, right-click in here, and you can actually right-click and choose Clear. Now, where you right-click is very specific. If I right-click in the middle, I get this menu. But if I have that transition back in there and I right-click on the transition, then I'm going to get this little small menu. So that's kind of valuable to use. What I want you to do is find one of these that you think is cool. There's a bunch of choices. Try a wipe. And that kind of does this. That's barn doors. There's a checker wipe. And I'm using Control Z to undo to get these out of there. That's interesting. And you can undo by Control Z, or you can right click and choose clear. So there's a clock wipe. This one's kind of obnoxious. Goes like this. And again, you can click here, drag left. And what you really should do is figure out how long you want that to last for. So if I go to the beginning of the clip, by going here in my menu and choosing go to in, that's not going to work. Go to out, that's the end point. Let me go back here. I should be able to find that spot exactly, but I know it's 3 seconds. So 3 seconds. And I want this to take 1 second to get the job done, so I'm going to go to 4 seconds. And that's 1 second. Looks like it lasts a little bit longer. You can zoom in on your workspace a bit more using this bar at the bottom, and that's useful. And so that's our titles, ready to rock. You should also include another transition out. Good idea if they're the same one, but they don't have to be. What I should point out is once you've got that second one in there, which I'm going to take out, you could dissolve it out. You could try a different effect control. So if I click on this, if I want to go in one way, but then I want to move out, then there's a slide choices in here. So there's a way of doing that up here automatic with keyframes, but let's try these out just to see what it does. Sometimes it leaves. Let's see what it does. So it kind of does this. What I'm actually trying to make happen, I'm going to go ahead and use my controls up here in my effect controls panel, is I'm going to find vector motion, and I have to have that clip selected or I will see nothing over here. Very frustrating. So get that opened up. We're going to set a keyframe for position, and I'm going to take the horizontal value and move it over like this so it's out. And so now, oops, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to move my timeline. So I'm going to go to the end of my timeline here, into the clip, and change that value. So now, you've got to have 2 keyframes. If you have only one keyframe, you have no motion. So double check that it works. If it doesn't, review the directions. Make sure that you have changed the time to get that right. So now I've got an input, and let's get out of here.